Kubeflow community meeting. Happy New Year. It's January 7th, 2025. I got the year right. That's not bad. And we'd like to welcome everybody as we start the meeting. We do want you to know that this call is being recorded. It is governed by the Kubeflow Code of Conduct. I've been asked to walk through the Kubeflow Code of Conduct before the meetings, just so people keep those in mind as we start demonstrating empathy and kindness towards other people, being respectful of differing opinions, viewpoint, and experiences, giving and gracefully accepting constructive feedback, accepting responsibility and apologizing to those affected by our mistakes and learning from the experience, focusing on what is not just best for us as individuals, but for the overall community, and using welcoming and inclusive language. So I hope that we all try to think about this as we continue the community this year. And I really am excited to see the energy that's come in. We do have a list of items to discuss. I don't know if we have folks from the release team, but typically we will go over the status of the release. And I know the release meeting was pretty good yesterday. Is there anybody from the release team here?
Yes. Hi, Josh and team. First, Happy New Year, everyone. It's glad to be back. Yeah, Ricardo had an outage problem. He couldn't make it. We have our release meeting yesterday. As everyone is coming from the holidays, we met with most of half of the liaisons from the working groups who they expressed they don't have any blockers or any issues. So release so far is green. However, we are reaching out to other teams as we are coming back from the holidays asynchronously. So please reach out if you were on the meeting yesterday. Especially the feature freeze is January 20. So if you have any blockers or need any assistance, please reach out as soon as possible. So that is, I think, one of the important items discussed. The second one is Ricardo, who will be leading the updates for the documentation in terms of the release. He is asking the working groups to reach out to him as soon as possible to discuss what type of documentation needs to be updated, how much, so he can start working on that. So in terms of documentation, please reach out to Ricardo as soon as possible. And I think that's all I have. Yeah. Thank you.
So we have a few of the working group people here. Does anybody have any? So let's just ask some of the working group leads here. How does their documentation look right now? Andre, I know you've got kind of view into a few of the working groups. Do you feel pretty comfortable with where we are with the documentation on that will be going into 110?
I mean, we always need help. But I mean, I think from our perspective, I hope to finish it by January, the V2 documentation.
So when you say need help, and we got this request yesterday on the model registry team where there was a master student that joined the call, and he was like, look, I'm looking for good first issues, but I don't see a lot. Is there any way that perhaps a good first issue would be read the documentation, help us improve it for a particular, working group or something? Would that be helpful?
Yeah. I mean, I'm encouraging all the working groups to mark their issues, even in their repos, right, with good first issue. So you can create a tracking issue for docs, right? And add the label to this issue, right? So we do this for training.
Additionally, a couple of things. So Tarek and I offer as well to help on the documentation. So Andre, if you need any help, let us know. As people join the community and they need to start working in new issues. So right now on the website, we do have a lot of issues that need to be categorized in which ones are good first issues. So those are some of the things I will be working on. But additionally, I started reviewing the technical documentation on the components and, and trying to add more clarification when I think it will help, especially newcomers, to learn more about Kubeflow. So I created one PR for the notebooks, really just tiny, small things, but I will continue, the idea is to continue working on other components. Tarek offered to also to review other ones. And if you hear about someone else, so please send us our way as well, so we can start like dividing the components and modules and start planning ahead.
That sounds great. So just for anybody that's new joining in, the release team meetings meet on Mondays. Valentina, do you want to give an update on, just a quick update on what that meeting is and what you see it doing over the next 3 months going through the release? I mean, this is the most important part of the release cycle. And I think if anybody's looking to join in and help the community, this is the time to really learn a lot. So, Valentina, when is that meeting and what do you see like the next 2 meetings before the feature freeze? Anything that the release team is really looking for before the feature freeze? Besides what you went over. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So the idea of these meetings is really having the working groups liaison who they provide updates on each component. As you know, Kubeflow is a whole ecosystem that is composed by different components. So the idea with this meeting is really to talk, really transparently about the current status of the release in terms of implementation, documentation, testing, the features that are planned, but also that is an opportunity to really ask, for help or talk about any potential blockers. So if it's a good meeting, if you're looking also like, hey, how can I help? This could be a good meeting, or if you want to be learning more about the release and what is planned. What we are looking into the next weeks is really focused on ensuring that the features that are planned for the release are being part of the release, or if there's something that needed to be discussed, that we do that in the meetings, as well as we are starting moving into documentation as a focus and also the testing plan. So the other thing, if you love testing or quality, so there are opportunities as well to contribute to the testing plan as well. We started working, so we do have our lead who started working on that, but for sure, the more, the merrier that we can include more testing use cases on the documentation. So it's a really nice meeting where, we met as a community and discussed what are the critical points for the release. So feature freeze, January 20. So the next meeting will be critical. However, we did discuss with Ricardo to have a synchronous communication with everyone on the working groups in the next weeks to ensure that everything is in place, or if there is any help needed. We also meet Mondays at 12 Eastern time. I will send here the information.
Great, thanks for that update. I'm glad to hear everything's on schedule. Let's continue on unless you have anything else from the release team or your efforts on documentation. I know you have done a lot of work on improving the website. Is there any quick update since you have the floor that you want to give there?
Yeah, so we closed at some point. We have almost 80 PRs. We closed them. We were, I took the time to review it manually. Right now we have 21, which we are perfect. But right now we are looking. I'm looking into how to scale that because we cannot we need to put in place better policies. So I have a PR in place that is looking into the stale that we discussed it before. So the idea is to start looking into how we can ensure that the PRs are not there sitting for too long and I've been followed by the person who created, but also that it has a nice template, a definition when I'm creating a PR and specifying why this PR is solving, what are the files that have been updated, and the same with the issues that we also, we do have a lot of issues open, so the next will be start looking into the issues. So if you want to contribute, there are plenty of things you can do on the website as well. So please reach out. Happy to work with you all.
So there's plenty of good first issues potentially there for folks.
So right now there are a lot of issues that need to be categorized on first issues. So those are the things that I need to start looking into. But if someone wants to, just reach out, maybe you can help also categorizing those as well.
Okay. Is there any regular meeting? Are you doing this just all on Git, or do you have like any status call or anything, or are you tagging into any of the working groups as you provide this, or is it just all done here in the community meeting?
It's all done here in the community, but do you think it would be maybe interesting to do another meeting for the website?
I'm not a big fan of scheduling up a bunch of other new meetings, but I will say that this has been the #1 item from the community that we need to improve upon is the documentation. And it's just incredible that you've closed so many. And I think that you will probably get, maybe we just put it on the agenda here because we get a lot of people here, and perhaps if there's an item, even one item a week or something that you could bring to our attention or something like that. I need help with this PR or that PR. Perhaps people will have more exposure to it. I'm not asking you to do extra work. Maybe I am, but if you want to get help, this might be the forum to give some exposure to some of those things that you think are most critical to get done. Because I think if we can close a lot of these out by the time the next release come out, that'll look really good for the community.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's a great idea. And also I think the website is not only important because, I mean, it's for end users, right? Once you, at least that's how I do it, right? Once you start working with a technology, you go to the website, try to learn, understand the product and try to test, download, run the dependencies, install it and start playing with it. So the documentation being up to date, have a clear process and clear steps are critical. But also, if I want to start working in the community, I think that is the best place as well. So I think the website is very critical for any project. So yeah, for sure, I will make sure that always we can include something. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, I'm trying to get you more help, not give you more work. So hopefully as you're closing these and you find challenges or you can't get responses, just bring them up, and then, hopefully that'll help us jingle some people to, either get a response or get some help.
Yeah, that sounds great. The other thing, while I'm starting working on updating the documentation, I know everyone is focused on the release, so I want to be mindful of that. So if you have a PR from me or from Tarek about improving the documentation, but you're really focused on the release, please just let us know. We also can help you with the documentation for the release as well, as I mentioned. Thank you so much.
All right,
That's
thank
all.
you.
And thank you, of course.
All right, so I see some really good topics that Andre has put in here. I know, Amber, you have some lists of things. Amber, can we kind of cover your stuff in the next 10 minutes? Is that possible, or do you think we're going to need more?
Nope, it's just an update. And I still need people's email addresses. So if you know someone who's on the list and it doesn't say that I've verified it and I've sent the emails, I'm also going to resend emails. It'll resend a voting key to everyone who has not voted yet they've verified their emails. I'll resend that. A couple people I think have missed the emails. It might be sitting in your spam, but I'll resend that. I can't take you, like Josh can't say, oh, Amber, this is the email address for so-and-so GitHub ID. They can give me that email address and I can verify with that person, but I need to hear it from them. Because imagine if you said, oh, I know these 10 people, and you gave the email addresses of 10 of your friends. Not that anybody on here would do that, but I need to verify it from them. And so Julius has sent me a few folks. I'll reach out to them today. Like I said, I'll resend the emails as well. So take a look at that issue for the elections being opened. And if there's not a key sent or email sent or verified, whatever I put beside of it, I'm having a brain freeze at the moment. Then if you know those person, have them reach out to me, either email me or send me a message on Slack so I can get their stuff added. Because we've got another week for voters. So we've had it open for 2 weeks now. This will be the third week. So we're coming into the home stretch. So I'll probably be sending out daily reminders starting tomorrow morning. As far as outreach goes, I want to start having, and I think a lot of people have expressed that they want to start meeting on this as well. So starting next week, I checked the calendar. It seems like Tuesdays, everybody's already geared up for this, and we can tweak it. We can try it for a couple of weeks, and if it's not a good time, we can move it. And I'll do the PR today, or first thing in the morning, to add right after this meeting from 11 to 11:45. I don't believe on the hour meeting, to give people a chance to, catch up, bio breaks, all that. So 11 to 11:45 Central. So basically right after this call. Starting next week, we'll start talking about outreach, and I'll reach out to all of those who've expressed interest to send you a calendar invite. We'll also get it on the community the Kubeflow calendar. And then, so get ready for that. All those, it would be, Josh, it would be 11 to 11:45 Central for the outreach meeting on Tuesdays.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put it
Yep.
at P2 just
Yep.
because we do so much on P2, right?
Yep, I try to do everything no later than noon. So people from California and it won't be too late for Europe and all that. And then the next thing I wanted to mention to everybody, for those who have expressed an interest in wanting to work on the graduation checklist, we're going to try it Mondays before the release meeting. So 10 a.m. To 10:45 Central, whatever that is in other time zones. We'll do that on Mondays starting next week. And if we need to move them around because people can't attend or whatever, we can have two. We can have one in the morning, one in the afternoon. We can have one on Monday, one on Thursday, one on Tuesday, whatever we need to do that. And then I want to, if it would be helpful, kind of have some office hours for anybody who wants to join from 10 to 10:45 on Wednesdays. And that office hours would be anything from what Valentina was talking about with the website. If she can join that time, whomever in the community is working on something, whether it's Andre and he wants to tell people, hey, I'm going to be joining office hours from this time to this time, and I'm going to be talking about training, or I'm going to be talking about Katib, or I'm going to be talking about KSC stuff, whatever it happens to be. We'll definitely have an agenda for it, like topics and who said, oh, I can join, so we can promote who will be on that. But that way, if people can't make these meetings, but yet they want to participate in outreach, they want to participate in graduation, they're wanting to figure out those good first issues, the things that we've talked about in here, we can have a set time, and I'll be there. Whoever wants to join me can. And that would be 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. to 10:45 on Wednesdays. So just wanted to give a quick update for that, and everybody should start seeing emails who have expressed interest and reached out to me. You should see those emails starting this afternoon and first thing in the morning. And we'll kick all that off next week.
March next week.
And I'll go ahead and add links after this meeting. I'll go in and add the links to everything, so everybody has it.
Amber, just a quick question. I'm wondering, do we need to fix calendar before you start these new meetings?
Well, I was just going to do the PRs and add them. I'm not sure what you mean. Like, we need to remove the meetings that no longer happen. Like, I don't think KF serving is happening anymore, and we probably need to update some links and stuff like that. But is that what you meant by fix, or
Yeah,
did
I just hope someone can help us to fix the calendar invites for the new users because they just don't get
Yeah,
invited.
I'll follow up on that issue that with the CNCF, because normally when people sign up for the mailing list, they get the calendar invites, right? And that's what's
Yeah.
broken.
Yeah, it was broken for like since like I think 2 years ago, around 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I know you filed an issue, but I'll follow up on that this week and
All right.
hopefully have something to report. If that will help you. Will that help?
Yeah, thank you. I think if we need to migrate to something else, maybe CNCF could help us with that.
Yeah, I'll ask. I'll definitely ask the question.
So Amber, the outreach meeting is Tuesdays right after this call, and it's weekly.
I think it should be weekly to begin with, because there's a lot of things and there's going to be a lot of people who want to, obviously there's going to be some drive-by things and stuff like that, but we can start weekly. And then if we're not having like action items and goals aren't being accomplished from week to week, then we can drop it to a bi-weekly thing. But I feel like there's so much that everybody wants to do and everybody is very energized and excited. We need to take advantage of everyone's energetic, new year, new me, new focus kind of thing. So we'll start with weekly, and then if that's too much, we'll drop it to bi-weekly. And that's for all of those, by the way, graduation, outreach, and the office hours. I'd like to keep weekly though.
All right, any discussion or questions on these particular items? My only kind of concern about this, Amber, is that these are a lot of meetings, and so, attendance, we're gonna have to watch closely,
Yep.
and some of these items may or may not be able to be consolidated into other meetings if they need to be. But let's see how well they do on their own, and hopefully, like you said, we'll get communities growing in each of these, which will, add energy and productivity, and then they can just report status back into this call or others.
Exactly. And I thought about that, but I also wanted to have a set time blocked off. So even if there's not people who can meet at those days and they can't meet every week, I'm not expecting everybody to meet every week, we can still turn it into a working meeting for those who can. We can get something done during that time frame.
I think that's a good idea. And let's see how we do going through now to especially the next release that's coming up into London. KubeCon, Kubeflow Summit. I think this is all probably a really good idea to make those be successful. Okay, anything else, Amber?
Nope, that's it for me. And I'm excited to collaborate with everybody and hopefully be able to hand some stuff off and let others. The whole goal of this, for me personally, is to see rising leaders come forth and participate and hand off a lot of things to folks who want to have that sustained contribution and want to be able to, like maybe have 50 contributions for the next election and those kind of things. So the goal isn't for me to keep all this stuff. The goal is for me to mentor and hand it off to people in the community who want to be rising leaders in the community.
So I have one kind of comment on the elections, and I'm going to catch a couple people off guard here, especially those who are running for the Kubeflow steering committee. We have three very capable and qualified candidates for the KFC. And I always say KSC, sorry. Kentucky Fried Chicken. I've thought about how folks can, kind of perhaps get information from these candidates. And I know, Amber, there is a testimonial phase. my question is let's say that you have one or two questions for the candidates. You know, what are their intentions with our community? No, like what are the, you know, what if there was one thing that they would get done, you know, during their tenure that would help change the community, or, you know, whatever it is. How do we get kind of to hear from the candidates themselves? Or is that just not part of the election process?
Well, we asked them to, like, in the nominations phase, to give those reasons. And so when you get a voting key, you can see the information they put forward and you can see the testimonials. So there's an issue that I linked to for each candidate, for you to see that information. And I think if we're going to do that, we should have had a formal thing before the third week of the elections phase. And I'm not saying you're not wrong, but we asked those questions, and we asked each candidate to give that information prior to the testimonial phase. And so those issues are still there, and they're linked when people get their voter key.
All right, so I'm a little behind, and I apologize if there's documentation there that I should be reading. That's bad on me, but I'm glad that you've pointed that out, right? So let's read those nominations. Let's read those referrals. Is there anything else that people should be aware of?
There's might be two phases for some people who are voting. They have to activate their email. So once I upload their email into the Civis system, it'll tell me who hasn't activated, and then I turn around and I send an email out saying, here's the link, activate your email, and then you should see the poll. It might be in people's spam, but it's there. And what I can do also, later today or first thing in the morning, I can just send out a reminder and a refresher with all those links as well. And I can drop that into Kubeflow Discuss, also into our Kubeflow channels on Slack, and you know, just make sure everybody sees it. I don't know how much more I could do to reach out to get people the information, but and then I'll just, like I said, I'll send out daily reminders for everybody who hasn't voted yet.
Any questions on any of the topics that Amber has just gone over? All righty. Amber, anything else from you?
No, I think that's more than enough. And I'm probably gonna have to drop here in about 10 minutes, but thanks. And I'm excited. Thanks everybody for joining, and we're looking forward to 2025.
All right. Well, let's move on. We have some Andre topics. Andre.
Yeah, maybe we could quickly talk about it. Yeah, I think as Amber said, I just want to say first of all, Happy New Year, everyone. I think 2024 was great for our community. I think it was really exciting to see the growth, and I'm, looking forward to see what we can do in 2025, because I think this year could be a pivotal moment for the entire ecosystem and the entire community. So yeah, I just want to speak a little bit about our V2 work, first of all. Even, during the break, we've done some progress. If you want to check out what we've done in the last couple of weeks, please just take a look at this tracking issue. The two remaining big topics that we need help and also review from the community. The first one is about LLM trainer. So just to give you a little bit of background, as Chase mentioned, we try to kind of provide a simple way for people to do fine tuning. But in the Kubeflow Training V2, we're actually trying to provide a set of recipes or blueprints for folks to actually not even worry about how to configure their jobs, but just take this blueprint and quickly fine tune all of the famous LLMs. And for this, what we want to do, we want to pre-create the trainer, which actually will fine tune any model that you want to use from industry. And we as a community planning to support several models in upstream. And for this, we try to design how this trainer might look like. So we have some initial implementation V1, while we're building this new train API. But in V2, we want to make this trainer more stable. and allows us to actually fine tune, maybe using the native PyTorch APIs rather than using the Hugging Face transformers. So we're looking for different alternatives just to see how we can make this component extensible, and at the same time provides, based of their support for like all of these distributed techniques like FSDP, DDP, maybe even using MPI or any other technique for distributed training. So this is the one thing I kind of linked the proposal. We're planning to discuss it this Wednesday at 2 p.m. UTC. But also we're going to discuss it in several weeks so we can finalize some of the initial design and implement it in the V2 as well, in the V2 APIs. So the first discussion will be this Wednesday at 2 p.m. UTC. And any questions for this?
I have some questions on this, but I'll let others go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
So this is probably more of a high level question and, may catch you off guard. So be ready. The progress of these models, like if you see between 01 and 03 and just how much benefit are we seeing in fine tuning an older model with the newer models coming out so quickly, right? And can you give any kind of like, by the time you do the time and the effort to fine tune it, right? And I understand your process there is simplification. Is it worth it, or do you wait for the new model to come out with? And is it just context specific type stuff that you're doing, or what's your take on that?
I think it depends on the use case, right?
Okay.
So again, I mean, we see right now the trend, like even, some folks from Hugging Face, like they see the kind of how BERT has been emerged in the recent, couple of months, but the BERT been released like, a few years ago. So my thinking that yes, models become larger, but at the same time, models should be like, context and use case specific, right? Because more and more folks are looking for kind of like smaller models with their, specific use cases, right? Like the thing is like all of these models are quite similar, right? So they're still using the transformers architecture behind the scenes, and it's still kind of, we can use the same APIs to fine tune them, right? So I don't see from on the infrastructure perspective, I don't see much differences when folks want to experiment with them. The question is like how we as a community want to guide, especially new people, what models they want to use, right? Because right now I have 1 million models on Hugging Face, right? How to to choose the right one, which will be perfect for your use cases. So this is the tricky one. Any other perspective from the community? Like, what do you think we can do to, improve understanding of what models should be used? Chase, you have your hand first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic. I think what I've seen with customers working in my day job is there's two conversations. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Well, there's three. Is the juice worth the squeeze? So these are very expensive models. Unless you're reaching out to another API, it can be very expensive to have a really generic model. So you're running a really generic model, and it might be giving you information, but the second part of the conversation is, does the context of the information fit the problem? And when you're looking at like, say, an automated researcher, that's an IP question. How you interpret papers, how you interpret findings, how you build like a health sciences or a healthcare learning system is really complex because papers come out from like the National Institute of Health all the time. How do you find the best ones? High quality information is very expensive. You need to curate said information. But then once you have curated, how can you give it the context and that awareness, which is, your IP within the organization? And that's where fine tuning comes in, where maybe a researcher or a clinician gets a response and they say, this is good enough if I was just reading the paper, but I want to adjust this, and maybe either I adjust the documentation, the first class kind of artifact, or they're the primary artifact, or do I need to tune it myself to get what a valuable response would be? And determining what a valuable response is again dependent on the environment where you serve that model. And you don't want to serve this massive model because then it becomes more expensive than just, looking by hand. So I think that there is a world where it's not either or, it's both. And really showing that would be amazing. Showing a RAG workflow, and then when you need to fine tune, and giving the community the power to do that. I think is where this is all headed, beyond just running these massive models, especially since you have to send data to these APIs. And do we trust those in the first place? Are you okay sending data outside of your organization, even prompts?
Yeah, I think plus one to a lot of what Jay said. I think my view is that Josh, and I think you kind of briefly mentioned this, like fine tuning just needs to be easier. And I think like the LLM trainer V2 should help facilitate that. I think we can probably go leaps and bounds further to facilitate that. Like models are continuing to get smaller, right? And I think like in the limit, it's probably that people will be able to fine tune even on local hardware. Hardware locally is going to be beefing up, right? And I think that people will kind of get to that steady state. And then it's about like making sure that people can do resilient, fault tolerant, distributed fine tuning on a Kubernetes environment, and then they'll come to Kubeflow, as well as the broader ecosystem that you get with Kubeflow. So even if someone trains locally, we'll want them to also, deploy their infrastructure on their own prem, probably because they don't want to like send out their data. And so being able to fit within the Kubeflow ecosystem, I think is where the real big impact is. And then things like RAG end up playing a really, really critical role with this. And then RAG, not just vector similarity search, but actually just broader, richer context injection. And so like the actual inference of these models is where most enterprises are going to play a critical role. I think as a general statement I'll make, for Kubeflow to grow and to be impactful with fine tuning, there are two things at play. One, these kind of God models that like are going to be just monstrously huge and continue to grow in size. Like that's going to be a true thing that's just used, and then there'll be a bunch of local models, and I think people are starting to see more and more. And so we actually with our platform can support both, right? We allow people to do distributed training to build these kind of godlike models, and also support the capabilities for people to serve these things in production. And so I think like we're able to support both those things. I think that the big reason that people choose Kubeflow, in my experience, is they don't have to send their data off-prem, right? And that's a huge risk that nobody likes. And so us leaning into that is going to be really impactful. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think getting to a lot more startups that are innovating is really, really important, because I think that's where there's been a gap, where we're really good with enterprises. Enterprises, because of the complexity of their needs, they're going to move at a different pace. But a lot of the rallying that's happening in the community, I think, is in the AI engineering space, which isn't necessarily MLOps entirely. And I think that that's like a really important area that we need to start to get that mind share. And a lot of that, again, is kind of been in RAG, because people are launching these models by just calling ChatGPT and RAG and saying like, okay, this works good enough. And so I think that it's important for us to kind of capture that too.
Yeah, just before, I just want to like one point before I pass to you. Like, I agree with Francisco, and also like the problem with machine learning is still black box, right? Like, we kind of like have all of these models, but people just need to experiment, especially data scientists and ML engineers, right? If we provide them an infrastructure which can allow them quickly experiment, they they open all these innovations. All this innovations will be much faster, because no one actually know which model actually give you better results. This was happening for entire for decades, right? Unfortunately, right now people use machine learning without really understanding if this actually will solve their specific problem. Yeah, but with this quick experimentation, it definitely should help the startups and their organizations to do it quicker. Go ahead, Julius.
Yeah, I also have a similar impression. What I see from customers is usually, yes, they do either prompt engineering and fine-tuning or fine-tuning. They do this on premises in the regulated sector, or they do use Kubeflow because they want to use something open source. But I think the big business is even more in the regulated sector.
It seems like what would be really cool is we maybe do a community case study where we take, and I propose the kind of the automated researcher, where we even find some responses. Maybe we can find a customer, we can find a researcher and say, hey, give us some examples of a workflow that would make sense to you. Give us some answers, and then evaluate the quality of those answers and show the end to end. And then maybe we write a white paper. We kind of bring the community along. So when someone's saying, how do I do something similar on Kubeflow, they see the end to end, they see the response, they see how one of the powers of what we do is we can collaborate with a lot of different personas. We can highlight that. And then again, do a talk on that and show the art of the possible together.
So I'm gonna push back on this a little bit, guys. Right, and provide a contrarian position that I've heard from the CTO of Microsoft, who said, you know, these teams want to go out and take a model and modify it, and by the time they get done with the testing and everything like that, the new model comes out and the new model's better than all the fine tuning and all the effort that they put into it. So I think the process that I'm trying to bring up here is the juice and the squeeze question, but also I think what you're getting to, guys, is that the process is reusable, perhaps, as the new models or different models come out, and that's really the advantage.
Well, what happens if I have a private paper? What happens if I have private IP or other IP, or the model isn't good enough? I think a lot of customers can get a nice prototype, but they hit the now what? And also, of course, you know, the Microsoft CEO is threw billions of dollars into ChatGPT and is now trying to sell Azure ML. So I feel as though they would, of course, say, just send your tokens to me because they want that data, right? They want the responses.
And to Josh, right? It's not always required to have models with the whole world knowledge, right? Most of the model deployments, if you see right now, there's a huge rise in compact models, and that trend will continue because for the most of the domains, you need domain-specific models. So you don't. It's not always required to have the latest models, but again, the models which are tuned for a specific domain, and I feel that we can create a story even in that space as well, compact model space. Like yeah, we were seeing model distillation and other techniques there. AWS has a service, right? So we can do more things over there as well. But again, compact model space is kind of like very unique, and there's a huge trend toward that.
I love all those arguments. I guess from a business person's perspective, I'm trying to figure out, when do I cut, which model do I use, and how long do I support it? Because and how long does that really be viable before the next model is just so much better that I have to start training again, right? So there's a cost benefit analysis that somehow we have to help people analyze, in my opinion.
Agreed. And
Right.
how do you
This is what-
measure so much
Yeah.
better? Right? That's the statement. And I think that depends on the org. That's the it depends, is what does better actually mean? And how do you measure the quality of a response based on the impact that it drives? And that's really hard.
Yeah, Amazon Bedrock, right? Like this is the service that Amazon creates, and this is specifically for Gen AI applications, right? So basically, we can have something in open source, which people can deploy on-prem, right? Yeah, Julius, you have your hands up for Discord, right? Good. Okay, Francisco?
Yeah, I guess just I think you know, Josh, both things are true that you said, and I think like it's always worth keeping in mind that a lot of the enterprise applications still aren't LLMs, right? Like, I mean, scorecards in the financial services is how billion-dollar transactions happen every minute, sometimes every day, or the reverse. And so I think like large language models are a critical moment at this point in time. And I think it's taken up mind share because it's brought all of software engineering into the AI game, because it used to be you had to have custom data that you could, run training on. Now it turns out you can just, get an API key to OpenAI, and then you can do all sorts of NLP and NLU under problems. But I think like the fine tuning of or training of old scorecards and other recommendation systems, those things aren't going away, and they'll probably increase. So, but ChatGPT is like a big old bazooka, and people are using it for everything, and I think that's good. Again, it's expanding the whole pie, right? People are just using more and more AI, ML, and things. I think we have to have an answer to how Kubeflow is relevant to fine tuning and LLMs and RAG. And also we have to continue to be successful with like the traditional, predictive tabular work that Kubeflow has done well for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kubeflow is a large lift for a lot of people. We give a big benefit when you can use it efficiently. I guess the point I'm getting to is making sure that people get ROI from the projects that they go after, and making sure that to your original point, Andre, when we started this, sorry to drag it on so long, it depends on what the application looks like before you go down that path, right? And perhaps giving them some guidance about, if you have so many transactions, if you have this type of requirement, that now fine tuning with RAG actually does become, and I think we outlined some of them here. Anyway, Andre, you have a lot of other topics. I'm sure we can keep talking about that. I'd rather talk about these things than, which Istio version we're using. I know we need to talk about Istio versions at time, but let's keep going, Andre, with your topics.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to join our training working call. We can continue discussion around, training and how Kubeflow can help. Yeah, like one important thing I want to mention about API. I think I don't know if you actually checked the yesterday CS when NVIDIA presented few exciting updates, but actually NVIDIA was mentioning, project called NVIDIA Nemo. And this project actually using API behind the scenes to perform inference and training. So I'm super bullish on API support in Kubeflow, and I think Kubeflow can play a pivotal role to run API on Kubernetes. And API is kind of a technology which used for many, many different frameworks to perform distributed computing. So we're looking for, to support API v2 in this Kubeflow train jobs. And I think we're planning to present several talks on the KubeCon about it. So if you want to get involved, let me know. I think API can definitely be, a great technology for folks, who want to, do ML on Kubernetes. Yeah, another topic that I want to discuss. I don't know if we have time. I know we have 6 more minutes today, but I'm like, let me just a question maybe. I know there is, many people think that, 2025 will be the year of AI agents. And do we have any kind of, thoughts or, like proposals where our components on ecosystem could be useful for such purpose? I also saw some talks on the KubeCon India when people try to create CRDs to, to develop those AI agents on Kubernetes. Just wondering what community think and what we can do in this space. Yeah, go
I
first.
think it'd be interesting to find projects that are doing this and reach out to them and support them. Because I think that's we're able to serve the models, we're orchestrate them and train them, but are we going to use Kubeflow to orchestrate the agents, or is that a different system? I mean, it'd be interesting to discuss those architectures and maybe bring them into the Kubeflow fold if you see people doing this right now.
I guess like agents have a lot of things in them, right? Like the LLM people use as an orchestrator, and and I think that's really powerful. I think and I'll sound like a broken record here, but the data layer needs to be solved for agents. Like most agents are backed by some sort of vector database to kind of like for a coding agent, all of your code you need to index and search, and so you need a database component there, and it's using your RAG with like dense search or whatever, and then the LM orchestrates, makes a plan and all this junk, right? I've used Devin, it's added to Feast, and we've done some, had limited but some success there, and it's cool to see. And a lot of like the components of these agents is an action, right? And like a plan to execute the action, and like implicit in that is a pipeline that's saying like, oh, do these things, and then the task itself is like go on a browser, look through the web page and then do something, right? And so the orchestration of it is a pipeline that like similar to something we have, and then the actual action step, that's like where there's a lot of new novelty in place. I have a lot of opinions about agents and the experience I've had with them, where purely generative stuff in agents is like a recipe for chaos, but I do think it's cool. I do think it's the future. I think that like for Kubeflow to be really impactful in this space, and again, this is the broken record part, I think we need to have like the RAG data layer as a good story, as a first step for us to be able to say like, hey, look, here's how you can use Kubeflow with your enterprise agents on your enterprise applications. And I do think that we can get there, but I think that we would have to, have these kind of primitives, because people will probably eventually figure out you'll need to fine tune agents, but you'll need that base layer of that data component. At least that's my opinion.
When you say, Francisco, like data layer, do you mean like how the data had been managed and stored on the cluster?
Yeah, well, just like literally an interface for the agent to act with. And like my opinion is I want to, like, it'll be through retrieval augmented generation, right? Or maybe CAG is what they're calling it now, a cache-based retrieval, right? That's the thing of the week. And like that's a layer where Feast can play in, right? And that's what I'm building with Milvus at the moment. But again, like once you settle on like the access patterns, what data is in scope for retrieval, beyond just, again, nearest neighbor search, then we can unlock the problems of like, okay, what's the interface for exposing like a browser action, or, like a commit to GitHub or something, right? There's some of these things that are deterministic in nature that people actually want with agents, where if you just tell LM to like do something, like just by nature of like randomly sampling from a posterior distribution, like it's going to do some things that you don't want all the time, and that's going to be chaotic. And so like I think for enterprises, they'll eventually kind of come to that conclusion that, oh, we want actually somewhat of an agent with a lot of determinism. And so I think like Kubeflow can probably be really impactful once we build on all of that like foundation layer pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is definitely. I think like we just need to establish like what is the foundational pieces we need to build, what we can reuse, and like what like how we can streamline the agent creation and deployment on Kubernetes, right? Because I believe almost all the building blocks are there. Maybe we need to think about like the intermediate cache layer, and we have some proposals on this very soon. But I mean, this is not obviously solve the RAG problem, but like at least how we can manage data between data processing workloads to training workloads, right? Storing this data in memory, maybe using Arrow and having like in memory data cache layer between your like ML workloads and data workloads. So this is the one thing which also could be useful, and this has not been solved in our ecosystem yet. Similar, like for example, on Ray, we have Ray data, right? On how they solve this problem within the cluster, within the single, like ecosystem. Yeah, but anyway, I think like I would love to like see some proposals from the community and some ideas, because I think like as you said, like I think we can play a great role there, especially for folks who consider Kubernetes as the primary platform for like Gen AI applications. And definitely we have a building blocks which can address all those challenges, right?
So we're at time. I think that these are, the energy in this conversation is, my opinion, close to where we need to go. I also agree with Francisco, is like, we can't be blinded by the shiny bright light, but it's hard not to be, that there's a lot of other model types out there that we support very well, and the legacy stuff from the last couple of years, right? Seems, so, look, I think we were talking about changing the formats of how these calls go. But Amber has, put these other meetings out here. I'm a little, I want to make sure that we're productive next week. Right? If we have another meeting, another community meeting next week, that we have good topics to go after. And to your point, Andre, is like, what is a proposal that we can actually work on, right? In some time-bound area. So what do we do here?
I think we should, I think Amber, I know she needs to drop, but she has some ideas and proposals for what we can do, right? I think once she established the outreach meeting, right? Like we can see what we can do with this meeting. But my only ask was that someone can drive the agenda, right? And have some topics and split this meeting between office hours and more like, technical or like, deep discussions around ML, right? So maybe users can come in and talk about their challenges, right? We should invite data scientists, ML engineers, right? To ask the questions of what they want, how we can be useful, right? I want more end users to talk, or like any users to talk about, their challenges.
Yeah, I'm okay. So next week we'll have this meeting again, and it's probably going to run somewhat similar, but I think towards this week, but I think that that's not what we wanted for this year. People were asking for a change in the format and the change that we go, and perhaps someone else to run at least one, or if we do this 2 different formats or whatever. I don't want to over meeting us. Right? So maybe people can think about that for next week.
Yeah, let's follow up, Josh. Definitely.
All right, I think that's it for today. Good meeting, good excitement.
Great meeting. Thanks for facilitating. Thanks for all the proposals.
All right, see y'all.
Thank you. See you
Thank
soon.
you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.